Hello, divine creations, divine marvels. Infinite consciousnesses. Thanks so much for dropping by this video. I was at a Neo-Advaita satsang once, and someone was sharing how self-inquiry is very stressful and that it didn't seem to be helping much. And this teacher, being a good Neo-Advaita teacher, said, for whom is it stressful? And for who is the person for whom it is difficult? Classic Neo-Advaita. Neo-Advaita is basically a religion based around self-inquiry and sort of forcing oneself to either do self-inquiry or just believe that I am the self. I am pure consciousness. Now, classical Advaita Vedanta, from which Neo-Advaita has stolen a lot, and claims to be a representative of, points out that self-inquiry is only for a prepared mind. And of course, Ramana Maharshi himself said this, that self-inquiry is only for a mind that's predominantly sattvic. So let's delve a little more into what that means. So the three gunas, I've talked about them many times on this channel. I'm going to assume people have a basic understanding of them. If you don't, feel free to check around this channel or take a peek around the internet. Tamas, which is concealing, Rajas, which is projecting or active, and Sattva, which is revealing. So so Tamas literally covers the self. It covers a lot, but in this case, it covers the self so that it literally can't be seen. That's why intense states of tamas lead to intense amoralistic behavior, such as murder or rape, or when you're completely cut off, when the mind, now it gets a little tricky. When I say you, I mean the personality, and by personality, Advaita Vedanta has a very clear answer to what is personality. It's the ego, the sense of doership, the mind, and oh poop, I forget the third. And the emotions. Sorry, it's called the subtle body. So the subtle body is just basically the experiencer and the person that we take ourselves to be until we don't. So when the subtle body, i.e. the person, is so obscured with tamas, then you have things such as when someone is so, it's so hard to talk about. When the subtle body, the personality, is so cut off from the self, then the personality is able to do things like rape and rob and murder, and is unable to quit things such as addiction, because tamas is, again, concealing, and in this sense, concealing in the sense of creates ignorance, and creates ignorance from the most important thing, connection with the self, or if you're a little more dualistic, connection from God. So if you're trying to do self-inquiry and you have a lot of tamas, good luck with that. You're, in essence, because the question is who or what does self-inquiry? Well, it's the mind. It's the subtle body. It's the ego, the mind, and I believe the third characteristic of the subtle body is the emotions. But again, the personality. So if the personality is full of ignorance and full of the mental quality of ignorance, inertia, and concealment, self-inquiry is not. It's like that's not the tool to clear that. So let's say you're less tamasic and you're more and the primary for that is karma yoga, and there's also certain lifestyle change, such as becoming more active. There's different recommendations for how to clear tamas. Now let's say that the mind, The subtle body is more filled with rajas, which is projection and also desire. Um, so if it's mixed with rajas and tamas, that's going to be more anger, and that's kind of its own thing. But once again, self inquiry is um, is a very subtle practice, and it doesn't pure self inquiry does not purify the gunas, because the gunas, again, self inquiry occurs in the mind. Neo-Advaita has no clear answer for who is it or where does inquiry take place. Classic Advaita Vedanta is like it's the personality, it's the subtle body. And that's why Advaita Vedanta spends so much time preparing the person, the personality, the subtle body for self inquiry, because Advaita Vedanta is actually pretty scientific. It's very logical, it's holistic, it's a whole system, really. Um, and so, again, if self inquiry is literally, in terms of the quality of mind it is, it's very subtle. It's like a tissue. It's like this very gentle, like a little puff of air. So think about a puff of air against ignorance, tamas that we were talking about, or tamas plus rajas, which is intense anger, or just straight rajas, which is desire, like the businessman who works 14 hours a day. Is like a little puff of air gonna really do anything? No. That's why Advaita Vedanta, classic Advaita Vedanta, and that's why Ramana said, until the mind is primarily sattvic, self-inquiry, I forget his exact words, won't be successful, or self-inquiry is only for the mind that's primarily sattvic. Because sattva is the quality of the mind which is revealing, which is discerning, which allows one to, first of all, make good choices in life, but then to discern subtle things like the self, like God. So once the mind isn't clouded by cloudedness, tamas, and it isn't obscured by activity, rajas, but it's mostly it's reasonably still, then a puff of air can send one right into the source. Now the thing is, where people can go wrong with this is that all of us have moments of sattva, even someone who's very tamastic or very rajasic. And sitting in the presence of a teacher can still the mind. So if someone goes and hangs out with a Neo-Advaita teacher, their mind gets sattvic, a la the transmission, then they're able to practice self-inquiry. And they're like, oh, this is great. I want more of this. But then they're not around the teacher and they can't practice. And to boot, if you haven't purified rajas and tamas, then these moments of lucidity, these moments become addictive. And then non-duality, I don't even want to call it non-duality. Then Neo-Advaita then just becomes an addiction. People are chasing the spiritual high. People are chasing the feel good of sattva, or moments of touching the self. So where's all this information coming from? Who is this dude talking on the internet? Well, I noticed a long time ago that the Bhagavad Gita spoke a lot about the gunas. And I noticed that they weren't talked about in satsang. So I've just had this passion for years and curiosity about the gunas, and this kind of intuitive recognition that it's very important. And then I started to notice that Ramana talked about them every now and then. And Ramana talked about there being strict prerequisites for self-inquiry. Once again, not talked about in Neo-Advaita satsangs. And then it kind of just broke through that what I'd been taught was a false belief system, and that actually I was addicted to these spiritual highs. I was addicted to satsang and to the high I would get. And And so from there, I found the author James Schwartz, whose book is available online, The Essence of Enlightenment. And he really dives into the nuts and bolts of how Advaita Vedanta is actually a holistic system of awakening. It's not a one, what is the expression? A one trick dog or something. I forget the expression. Like Neo-Advaita pretty much just has one trick up its sleeve, and that two tricks really: either inquire or you are the self. That's all it has. And if you notice, go to any Neo-Advaita satsang. That's all you'll see and hear over and over and over. With a little some poetic meanderings mixed in, and a lot of powerful Shakti pot, and yeah. So that's a lot of information. So let's sit for a moment. Or I'm going to sit, and you're welcome to join in. Just digesting all that. Taking a real honest look. Hey, have I become addicted to spiritual highs, satsang highs? In James Schwartz's book, which is available online, there's a chapter called The Ordinary Person, which fascinatingly portrays the evolution of ignorance, how we disconnect from the self, and then how Rajas and Tamas play out until they take someone to really destruction if they take it far enough down. And the answer that James proposes, which interestingly enough is the first spiritual instruction that Ramana Maharshi gives in his book, where he gives a systematic view of self-inquiry, is karma yoga, the attitude of leaving the results to God, and doing one's duty without seeking to get anything. And that's the beginning of the unwinding of tamas and rajas, which are, especially rajas, which is grasping. So I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining in. A warm welcome to our live viewers. Take care. Much love.